You're watching for airplanes, you listen to anything that moves. It's not easy work, I don't care how you look at it.
This is how we make the moonshine.
It's a money-driven criminal enterprise.
If you really love your country, you're gonna have to love moonshine.
It exists, but it doesn't. Almost like a myth.
No fishing and trapping and hunting. Well, we're not gonna do none of that. It's in the family, 200 years.
If you come in thinking you're just dealing with a bunch of silly country boys, you'll get your hat handed to you.
Please search warrant!
They are very good at what they do.
Maybe somebody will appreciate someday what they're doing, you know.
I don't know about redneck, but we're talking about roughneck here. There's money to be made out there as long as you don't get caught at. Our business is booming.
Moonshiners, brand new series coming in December.
You can really make big bucks on this stuff.
My name is Stephen Middleton. It's Steven Middleton. I'm an instructor of mass communication here at Morehead State University. Some of these stories I haven't shared in years, but I'm a first-generation college student. First jobs I ever worked were construction, very blue-collar jobs. I was a plumber for a while before I got into what I'm doing now. But there was a period of time where I participated in moonshining. And it is highly illegal, and I do not condone this. And when I was a college student, I was broke, I didn't have a lot of money, and it was all to support pay my tuition, honestly. And my uncle made moonshine, and he was an old school moonshiner, and he enlisted me to help him, but it wasn't what you think. It wasn't like the TV shows. So my job was a sugar runner, and it was so much fun doing this job. So he had this giant map of Kentucky and West Virginia. That's where my family lives, in Elliott County. It's nearly as close to go to Huntington, West Virginia as it would be to go to, Ashland and Huntington are side by side, so my family never really went towards Lexington. But so he had this giant map, and he had all of the grocery stores circled on it. And so what you would do as a sugar runner, you would go to these stores, because you need sugar to make moonshine, and you would buy 50 pounds to 100 pounds of sugar at a time. And he was so worried that they were going to catch on to what we were doing, they were going to pinpoint us, they were going to tell the police, they were going to figure out where we lived. And so we would go to Milton, West Virginia, and Huntington, West Virginia. We went as far as to down into Man and Logan, West Virginia one time to buy sugar. Of course, we'd hit Carter County and Elliott County and places like that, but usually where people didn't know us. So that was my job, was running sugar. It was so much fun, because you would just, the fact that, you were pushing hundreds of pounds of sugar in a grocery cart, and no one ever really questioned it. And one older lady one time looks at me and she goes, "What are you gonna do with all that sugar?" And I go, I'm making a lot of pies. And she goes, "Mm-hmm." No one else ever questioned it. Every culture in the world has some form of homegrown alcohol they make. And moonshine was just that for Appalachian people, but pop culture made it more popular and made it seem exotic and elaborate. I don't necessarily think it's bad, but at the same time, like it's a gimmick. It's a stereotype that people kind of want to live up, that whole stereotype of the country person that's partying and woo and drinking moonshine. You'd be better off just buying some good bourbon. My friend that worked for the Moonshiners show worked in the bourbon industry for a long time and knew that side of the business, and has sort of hinted that it's pretty scripted, it's pretty set up, made for television.
Hi, I'm Tom Kiffmeyer. I'm an associate professor of history at Morehead State. Been here since the 20th century. It goes back to the beginning of settlement, almost from the beginning. In terms of Kentucky, at least, or the West, farmers always, agriculture is a pretty sure way of surviving, but it's not a guarantee. So what a lot of almost all farmers would do, they would grow a little extra grain. Just a little extra. You don't know what your harvest is going to be, what your yield's going to be. You might get too much rain till it'll rain, stuff like that. So you always got to plant a little extra. So you usually had a little bit extra grain, maybe a little bit extra of everything. Really, the grain became the most important one. And then when you had a surplus, hopefully you did, what were you going to do with it? You can't really store it. There's no refrigeration. We can't put it in cans and that kind of thing because it's the 1790s at this stage. You know, when white Americans first got here. You know, what are you going to do with it? So distilling it was a fantastic way of preserving excess grain. So it preserved excess grain. That's the first thing. And then you could transport it very easily. Because if you had this much grain, well, that much grain, you know, that much whiskey, right? So you could pick it up a heck of a lot easier than picking up a whole 100% grain and haul it to the next place. So it preserved it. It was easy to transport, and then it retained its value because it didn't go bad, right? So whiskey distilling became a very, very important way for people to market surplus crop. Not the market that we think about today. You might be more trading it, that kind of thing. You might have sold it, but you weren't making a ton of money off it. But it was a way to stretch the household income almost indefinitely because it didn't go bad. So whiskey distilling is very important to the economies of Western farmers. I'm talking Western Pennsylvania, Kentucky, the western counties of Virginia, that kind of thing, Tennessee, the western part of North Carolina. So it's critical to virtually everybody at that stage of the game. Now you're telling me they made a show about this. I did get wind of this. It's one of the reasons I don't watch TV because of things like this, kind of romanticizing it. I don't know if you've noticed that you can go to the liquor store and now buy moonshine. It's kind of a perversion of what it really is, right? So I'm not too familiar with all these shows, but I think they're a way to sort of, it doesn't do much, what I know of Linda, it doesn't do much to enlighten why, you know, the historical reasons why this is such a critical thing. I think it's more to reinforce the vision that certain parts of the country will let anybody who's watching this determine what those parts are. I'm sure they can figure it out. Or sort of outside the norm and doing something that at minimum skirts the law, if not out on flaunt the law. So I think that's what they're trying to do.